Hey everybody, welcome to module number 2. So we're going to be looking at the European colonies as well as native nations this week. So kind of like how with last week's module, we kind of did a speed run looking at what the Spanish were doing, the French and the Dutch. We're going to be looking at what the the English are going to be mostly doing with this next chapter. So here's our learning objectives for this week. The big thing to keep in mind here is that we're going to be comparing and contrasting. We're going to evaluate the role of Native American nations. We're going to analyze systems of labor and kind of try to start talking about the slave trade. We're going to explain various cultural, religious, and economic exchanges. We're going to look at some Native and European conflicts, and we're going to interpret how systems of power, race, and identity sort of develop in colonial societies. Very long list of things to read this week. Obviously, the big one, Chapter 2 from Eric Foner's Give Me Liberty. There's a ton of primary sources to look at for this chapter. Feel free to read some of them, read none of them. Ultimately, that's your decision. You will have to read some for the DBQ assignment and the discussion board, though. But ultimately, that's your decision as to what you want to read this week. So let's dive in. This video will cover sections 1 and 2. Sections 3 and 4 will be the next video. Section 5 gets its own video, and then sections 6 and 7 will be their last video of this week. So all in all, there will be 4 lecture videos for this chapter. So in terms of looking at England, they were kind of behind when it comes to the Spanish, the Dutch, and the French when it comes to exploration and colonization. They had a lot of issues, and compared to other European powers, they were really a second-rate country with a lot of disunity going all the way back into the Middle Ages. We have Henry VII, who unifies the country following the War of the Roses, which, if you don't know about the War of the Roses, it is a long, long story between the Yorks and who would eventually become the Tudors. There's a whole mess of things here. Eventually, they'll unify. Henry VIII, Henry VII's son, and you probably know Henry VIII, the guy who had 6 wives, is going to launch the Reformation in England, forming the Anglican Church, getting all of England effectively discommunicated from the Catholic Church. Bunch of stuff there. It's going to cost a lot of money and energy as they expand into Ireland at first, and it could have been used for exploration. They used a variety of approaches to get into Ireland, whether that be peaceful missionary work, full-scale invasions, or just some other shady things. It's important to point out the Irish will be excluded from society, and there's a lot of similarities to what happened to the Moors or the Spanish Muslims. And this is also going to be later used in English colonization as well towards native populations. Early attempts at colonizing North America are going to fail miserably. The big example being Roanoke. There's a pretty good video. You probably are familiar with the Lost Colony and how it just, up and disappeared. And again, just like last week, any videos that are on the slides, links to those will be provided in the description box down below. One of the big things, kind of like the Spanish spreading Catholicism, for the British is going to be spreading Protestantism. To them, national glory, profit, and religious missions all going to be increased due to their beef, you could say, with Catholicism. They sought to free the Americas from the Pope. They were like, nope, the Pope shouldn't have that power. In 1584, we have a book being written by a few people, A Discourse Concerning Western Planting. This was meant to encourage Elizabeth I, Henry VIII's daughter, to support colonization. And it's important to point out, just like we talked about last week with the Spanish missionaries spreading Catholicism, they're going to do a lot of the same things just with Protestantism. It does also set the stage for England to become a major European power as well. The big thing to keep in mind here is that we're going to see this be used as a jumping off point for specifically targeting native cultures and native communities. Honestly, colonization came at the right time for England. It became a refuge for England's surplus population. Their population had massively expanded. So what this does with this idea of colonization, it provides 2 potential solutions. Well, first off, there's too many farmers. They're honestly all being evicted from their land. Due to the enclosure movement that sees small family farms being consolidated into corporate farms, people were really being pushed out, and the government couldn't keep up with the problems. Poorhouses and debtor prisons were massively expanding, and In kind of a shady way, colonization became a way to send the poor somewhere else and make it no longer their problem and not even in their sight. So that whole out of sight, out of mind context is going to see thousands of people sent to the Americas. So these are like also rather dangerous men to society, not in the sense as like criminals or like murderers. These are people that are not indentured servants or slaves or even business owners. They're people that are just living their everyday lives. Thomas More actually in Utopia portrayed America as a place to escape the economic inequalities of Europe. And that really appealed to these masterless men who wanted to maintain control of their own labor. So it's also here where America gets that whole place of opportunity concept and kind of just ties in that whole idea that with this, they can maintain that system of not being controlled by somebody else and still have that opportunity to massively expand. Okay, so that's section one. Diving into section two, English immigrants. So this is like early colonization, so 17th century, so 1600s. It's pretty unstable and dangerous, and it did require sustained immigration because a lot of people died. A lot of people died. So there was a much larger group willing to emigrate, and they're willing to escape economic conditions. And many had already moved from place to place throughout their lives. So, what's it moving from England to another hemisphere? Not that big of a deal to them because it's giving them the opportunity that they did not have before. A lot could not pay their own way and arrived through. Well, excuse me, those who could pay their own way arrived as free people and were easily able to acquire land. That's not the case for everybody, though. About two-thirds of English settlers, arrived as indentured servants. Now, when we talk about indentured servants, there's a kind of a misnomer that it's not slavery, but it is also slavery in a sense that indentured servants could be bought and sold. There was a restriction of rights, and there was no guaranteed route to economic autonomy. Because of the high death rate, a lot of indentured servants died before their period of indentured servitude was over. And a lot of people that had to come over as indentured servants found life in America way less appealing than they had anticipated. A lot saying this was one of their bigger regrets. And in a lot of cases, they were not able to achieve that independence and freedom that they wanted in the first place. Especially here in the American colonies. Land was the basis of liberty. This gave people control over their own labor and gave them the right to vote in most colonies. For a lot of time, the main concepts of being able to vote meant that you were a man and that you owned property. It did lure a lot of free settlers. Now, at the beginning, colonies were launched with grants. These are like land grants, usually designed to reward relatives and allies of the king, and so really kind of got restricted to the super wealthy. And it also becomes a major source of wealth and power for colonial officials. But here's the thing. Without labor to work the land has no value. So that resulted in most colonies eventually having to turn to slave labor, Virginia being one of the largest examples of that. So a little bit on the native Atlantic coast, so like prior to European, specifically English arrival. The land was already occupied. A lot of early English historical narratives claim that, oh, there wasn't anybody there, just these barbarians. No, there were actually full-blown civilizations and groups of people that already lived there. And as more and more English settlers arrived, that placed pressure on native populations. English settlers wanted the natives to leave. They wanted them gone so they could take their land. Now, obviously, contact with them was unavoidable. They did engage in a lot of trade, and this was appealing to a lot of people. And native populations did actually integrate a lot of English goods into everyday life. They sought trade and alliance with the English. Now, a lot of people saw the English as dangerous neighbors. They were destructive to native agriculture. And there will be recurrent warfare between colonists and Indians, not on like a massive scale, like we'll talk about in later chapters, but like there were definitely some spats going on. All right, that is it for this first video. I will see you guys momentarily in video number 2. Bye, everybody.